So good afternoon to all our farmers. Welcome back once again. We're continuing our conversation with the agriculture expert, Clyde Mabonga. Clyde, good afternoon, good day rather. Good day to you and welcome.
Good day, Patrick. Welcome, farmers.
Yeah, our last conversation ended off on the note where one of the issues that you raised was actually the need for farmers to develop that quality collaboration, working which I thought was really useful. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that means to you and why you think it might be useful for farmers to learn to collaborate with others? What is the value of collaboration in an environment of complexity and rapid change?
Well, yeah, thanks so much, Patrick, for that one. It's an interesting one, and I really love that one for obvious reasons. I will just start from a risk management perspective. You discover that part of, the principle of insurance, it says it's about trust. Whether you trust the next person, do you trust your supplier of inputs, do you trust your fertilizer, do you trust your insurance company? As you build that trust through collaboration, it's something that is going to go a long way in helping our farmers. Why do I say that? From an insurance point of view, or rather from an insurance point of view, you'll realize that part of the requirements for the insurability of a risk is in what we call the underwriting process. There is information that is required by the insurer when you are looking at the risk and you are evaluating the risk. If you have got a solid and stable relationship with your insurers, they already trust you as a farmer. They know that you're going to produce. So why is it important? When they were going to use a blanket rate of 7% for you to get your insurance cover, and you've got a proven record through your relation, and sometimes you can get a discount for good performance because of the relationship that you have built over the years. And now we'll just move on to farming in general. You discover that pacho panosangana nematambudziko akawanda semafarmers tinowirwa nawo dzimwe dzenguva ini ndiri ndega. So mumwe asinombovirwa nedambudziko iroro haangazive kuti chii chinoitika. But if we share our experiences, these farmers will then be able to interact and share experiences and how to overcome the problems in the future. And it actually speeds up the process of learning. I think it's something that I highlighted in the previous session when I said in this uncertain environment, which is very volatile, we need to be constantly re-evaluating and learning and relearning our production practices, our production systems, so that we unlock the value and continue to produce. So we can only do that when we exchange notes, when we share our experiences amongst farmers, amongst all other stakeholders involved in the production value chain.
Fantastic, and thank you. I like that qualification. I want to believe that the farmers will accept it in the spirit that it is offered. There is also a saying, I think, that will support what you were saying in terms of collaboration, Clyde. There's a saying that you and I can choose our friends, but we do not choose our neighbors. Saka kunguwirirana nevamwe is a good policy to live by, especially if you're a farmer and you talk about things like fires, where you might also need to reach out and help and get help from surrounding farmers. Let's move on now, and as we now start to get more specific, the subject matter, which is insurance. What is the true value of managing risk here. So what I would like to know from you is there a difference when insurance companies look at contract farmers and those that are self-financed farmers? What do those terms mean, and do they affect the need for insurance?
Okay, I'll start off by just pointing out to say that the need for insurance, it doesn't really know whether you are contracted or not, because these perils that can cause our farmers to lose, they can happen. Whether you are self-financed, you can be hit by a hailstorm. Whether you are contracted, you can be hit by the same hailstorm. So that we must admit that the weather doesn't know, or the periods doesn't know whether you're contracted or not. But what then it means from self-financing and contracting is that most of the times you realize that if you are contracted, insurance is a very close subject, it's a very close topic, because the contractor themselves or the financier themselves, they would be interested, or rather they would be very keen to monitor the risk, because they would want to protect their investment that they would have put when they are supporting the farmer. But most of the times you realize that as a farmer, sometimes we feel like it's a cost for us to insure, because it's an input just like fertilizer. You can imagine buying an extra bag of fertilizer. It comes at a cost. Sometimes we choose not to, but the repercussions now, we discover that sometimes it can be catastrophic when you lose everything that you have put in. So that's why there's need for insurance. And from an administrative point of view, you discover that when you are contracted, you are aggregated, maybe from a smallholder, a farmer, perspective, you realize that you are maybe 50 or 100 in a scheme. What it means is that in terms of insurance affordability, it comes out way much cheaper, because the insurance company would then be using the law of numbers in terms of the administration costs and servicing costs for those clients. But then sometimes you discover that when you are just one farmer in Ubus a day, you want to be saved by the insurance company that is going to travel all the way to your farm. You will note that most of the times you are charged a blanket rate, because it's administratively expensive to administer one client than when you are aggregated. Those are the differences really in terms of self-financing and contracting.
Wow. Yeah, very interesting again. But also it takes me into the very next question. So now that you've made that distinction between the two, to what extent is documentation something that our farmers need to improve in? To what extent do you see good documentation being practiced by our farmers?
Well, I must admit that it's an area which requires a lot of improvement, because most of our farmers, they don't keep records, but it's a critical component of our farming to be able to keep records, because as part of the risk management process, you need to be tracking really how much you have put in, what quantities and what chemical. Yeah, because sometimes in some cases, I think last year there was an issue that was topical in social media cycles when a farmer mistook a certain chemical for a certain chemical, and dosed the chemicals with the poisonous substance, cattle with a substance, a poisonous substance rather, and the cattle died. So when you don't have record keeping, when you don't have clear labels in your storage facilities, something that we encourage when we visit the facilities, when we visit our farmers, we try to emphasize on good record keeping. It's an area that needs and requires an improvement, because when you are a very good record keeper, you are actually a very good risk manager. And it also helps. I'll just also give an example. Imagine spraying a herbicide instead, a contact herbicide instead of a systemic insecticide, and then you burn the whole crop, and then imagine applying paraquat to the field when you thought you were applying a fungicide, for argument's sake. So it's something that we need to encourage our farmers, and we implore them to improve in that aspect.
I agree. I agree. All very important. Saka, to our farmers, again, a reinforcement. My documents in you are important. And I think Clyde mentioned another important word, labeling, so that we know what things are called and we know what is in there to guide your workers to be able to make the right choices. And in making the right choices, it also helps them to produce the right result at the end of the process. Now, one of the processes that you as insurance organizations must be able to go through is the assessment of the value of a crop. And I think this has a determination on the kind of premiums that my farmers will eventually pay. Can you talk about initially how the assessment of value of a crop is conducted and arrived at?
Oh, sorry, I know I was speaking on mute. So I think that's an interesting one that I would also want to put out there. Having been a loss adjuster myself, I think we do have processes that when our farmers are not away, for example, we want to ascertain the value of the crop after an incident has occurred. Say, farmer and frost, and then you want to assess and quantify whether the frost has an impact on the crop or not. The first part of it would be you're just looking at the itself. Husbandry, what do we mean? The general crop management at the farm. That includes your record keeping. That includes the documentation of the inputs that you have put in. For example, you want to know how much was put in because it has got a bearing on how much you were going to get. When you put 2 bags of compound D in a hectare of maize, you can't expect to get the same yield with that farm who has managed to put in 6 to 8 bags of cereal blend 62323. You realize that from a yield perspective, what they are targeting and what they are likely to get is going to be way different, just like day and night. You can't expect to get the same. So in terms of inputs, how much you have invested from your quality of seed, your fertilizer that you have put in, your chemicals, your spraying routines, and your scouting, your weed management, it has to be on top of the situation for you to, it has to be on point for you to get the desired yields. So that's one thing that we would also be looking at to say in terms of management itself, taking away any risk that is going to make you lose. Were you going to get that yield? And also what we then look at is the location itself. There are natural regions that are not ideal for some crops. There are natural regions that are not ideal for some animals. So with the assessment really should be able to point out to say the farmer was in the correct region, the farmer was using the correct methods, the farmer was using the best husband to, in that instance, instance, you see that you are probably at the same level of understanding now with the insured as far as the yield is concerned. So if then a loss happens, the insurer knows that you are going to get that. But if you did then you start to have problems because already you were not going to achieve that particular yield. For example, if your timing of planting, you were late, say, by a month into the season, just like planting your maize, a long season variety in January, and then you want to get a compensation for 10 tons of maize, it's something that is not practical. So those are the aspects that we'll also be looking at. For an irrigated crop, you will see that part of the questions is that how often were you irrigating and how many moons were you applying, which basically is asking you to say, show us your irrigation cycle. It's something that has to be documented as well. So basically, from an initial assessment, those are the things that we'll be looking at.
Yes, and thank you, Clyde. And interestingly, I see the recurrence of that word again, documentation, because it's so important for farmers to be keeping this documentation to help with the overall assessment. Am I right?
So true. Yeah, it makes it much easier. Documented so that there is no argument. Yekuti munhu anozoti mirai nditanga ndazonotsvaga kuti mvura yandaidiridza ndakanyora papi ozotsvaga madocuments asingaite tali nezviripo, because you want to satisfy a good husband which was not there in the first place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and thank you, Clyde. Again, so in terms of one of the things that happens in this life is sometimes in business we misunderstand one another. We don't necessarily always get the result that we anticipate. What happens in the event of a dispute? Who do mafama zedu go to kana zvinhu zvashata? Because insurance is a delicate business, in the same way that farming is also a delicate business. If the two are not in agreement, what do you suggest for our farmers?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to be clear is that we must make sure that there is trust between the farmer and the insurer, because that normally is going to make all these arguments fall away in the event of a loss, because it would genuinely at the farmer side have happened, and the insurer then will be in a position to say, okay, I know this farmer is a very good producer. Now, when you trust each other, then you can have all those disputes fall away. But it's not always the case, and it's not a smooth road. And sometimes you will have disputes between the insured and the insurer, if I can use those terms, where the insured is the farmer and the insurer is the insurance company. All right. There are several channels that can help address a dispute, including just getting in touch with the insurance councils of Zimbabwe. They can just help the farmer and raise the voice of the farmer, because sometimes the farmer feels, okay, my voice is not enough to convince the insurance. But getting in touch with the insurance councils of Zimbabwe, they can help. Because all insurance companies are regulated by the Insurance and Pensions Council or Insurance and Pensions Commission, IPEC. They can also go there just to air out where they feel like the service was not enough. But there is also some cases where there's a legal route that some farmers might be aware, because an insurance document or an insurance contract is something that should be legally binding. And you can also use that route in trying to address my concerns, and then Twitter saying, and in some cases, ishoma from the insurance company. Saka sometimes also misunderstanding. There is a clause, maybe in that insurance contract, there is an excess where you are basically saying, farm, but the fact that apana kunzwisisana ikoko, sometimes issues anogona kutinetsa. So I think there are several channels. Really, I think some of them have pointed out. They can also assist our farmers.
Yeah, it does sound that way. Yeah, and thank you for that insight. I think one of the questions that will lead us to a close is possibly one of the most pleasant, but also one of the most reassuring. At what point is value redeemed if one has made a claim? At what point is value redeemed? Or when is a claim reviewed and when is payment due? Because Munwese wants to be put, the whole, my understanding of insurance is that it puts you back in the position that you were before the event. So when is payment due?
Yeah, so depending with the insurance contract in place, I must also highlight this because our farmers sometimes can choose just an input cost-based insurance cover, where you are basically just trying to recover your inputs that would have invested in the event of a loss, because maybe you have invested 3,000, and when a peril happens, you then harvest a value less than that, and maybe you want that difference to recover your full input cost. In that case, you discover that most of the times, in after the final adjustment, because normally when a loss happens, an insurance company can send an independent loss adjuster to verify and monitor the crop up until the end of the season, where the loss is then computed to say, now that you have harvested, this is the value that you have redeemed. So therefore, you were supposed to get this much, and then the full computation is done. But there are some cases where there is a write-off just during the season. What do I mean by that? You've got your tobacco. After topping, say, in January, an 18 leaves, or rather 16 leaf crop is performing very well, and a hailstorm comes through and wipes everything down. There is nothing to wait for after the end of the season, because you're not going to sell anything. So what then happens in that case? You have loss adjuster coming to adjust to assess the yield and certify that truly it's a write-off. And in that case, a payment is done just after certifying that a loss is okay. Then in also some cases, it depends on the type of cover, the peril that would have happened, and the level of cover itself. Because in some cases, in a yield cover basis, you realize that you can only ascertain the yield at the end of the season. But if a fire happens, say for a winter wheat, then everything is burnt to ashes. What's the point of waiting till the end of the season? So claims are paid after certification by assessors to say this is how much the farmer has lost. Of course, that is to be agreeing with the insurance contract in place, or the insurance cover that the farmer would have preferred during the start of the season.
Great, Clyde. I think for me, the most important words there were when you said claims are paid after the certification by assessors. I think I really grasped that one. So there you are, farmers. Claims are paid after the certification by my assessors. Yeah, we'd like to thank you once again for your time, Clyde, as we go deeper now with the insurance message to all our farmers. Our encouragement to you is, what do you want to know? We are now going to get more specific with these conversations. So our hope is that you continue your communication with us. You tell us which direction you would like us to go, because you are the ones who are going out there every day making the very most of the opportunities that you see out there every day. And people like Clyde and myself are here prepared, ready to try and make sure that you have the very best information at any one point. So Clyde, can I take this opportunity to thank you once again for your participation?
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I also want to just maybe just to highlight one more thing before I go. Insurance is there to save our farmers. We also want to get feedback from new farmers in terms of the products that you want, because like I highlighted earlier on, there are new risks that are coming in that you are experiencing out there that are not covered in traditional insurance programs or insurance covers. You would want also to be covered. Share with us your thoughts in terms of how you are experiencing losses, the pattern of losses, document that, record that, share with us so that we develop products that can then address your concerns that are going to serve you. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Yes, and thank you for that footnote, all very important. And I'm sure, Kuti, our farmers also appreciate those bits of advice and your openness to receiving the feedback that is so critical in your product development. And there you heard it for yourself, farmers. What products specifically would you like the insurance industry to come up with for your benefit? There are new risks emerging. What are you seeing? We are here for you. And perhaps before we close off, we go back to the providers of this platform, the Insurance Council of Zimbabwe, and we want to thank them for giving us this airtime, and likewise the team that supports them at Agribusiness Media. So Rawlings, can I hand back to you before we come to an official close?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Patrick, and thanks so much, Clyde, for such a great conversation. And you really covered key issues there. And I just wanted to remind our farmers that farming is a business, and we need to treat it and we need to run it as a business. And also there is need for us to migrate from subsistence farming right to commercial farming. And that is a shift in our mindset. It doesn't matter how big your land is. It doesn't matter how small your land is. That migration or that shift is a requirement. So risk management is part of your, or is actually key in your farm business. So it's an area that we really need to give attention. And many thanks to the Insurance Council of Zimbabwe for these sessions that are demystifying risk management in agriculture. So thanks so much, farmers, and please do join us next week for another session.
Thanks again, and have a good day.
Insurance is there to protect you against the threat of financial loss caused by everyday events. It removes uncertainty by transferring the unknown consequences of losses from theft, fire, floods, or accidents to an insurance company. The protection gained from paying an insurance company a regular sum of money is called a premium. By collecting premiums from many people, the insurer accumulates a pool from which losses can be paid for. We represent short-term insurance companies in Zimbabwe and are here to help you understand how they can help you with everyday insurance, because you never know. For more information, call us on 0242 708 031 up to 2, or visit our offices at number 4 Josiah Tongogara Avenue, Harare.